Chapter 56. Full Awareness of Breathing. Sometimes the Buddha or one of his senior disciples gave a Dharma talk at the bhikkhunis monastery. Once a month, the bhikkhunis also attended Dharma discourses at Jetavana or Eastern Park. One year, thanks to a suggestion made by Venerable Sariputta, the Buddha extended the retreat season by an extra month. Sariputta knew that by extending the retreat 1 month, many bhikkhus and bhikkhunis from distant centres would be able to travel to Savatthi for direct teaching from the Buddha after they had concluded the retreats at their own centres. And indeed, many came. Lay patrons Sudatta, Visakha and Malika used all the means at their disposal to provide food and dwelling for nearly 3,000 monks and nuns. The Pavarana ceremony, held at the end of each rainy season retreat, fell on the full moon day of the month of Kartika that year, rather than Asujaya. When the full moon of Kartika arrived, Kumudi flowers were blooming everywhere. Because the Kumudi, a white lotus, always blossomed at the same time each year, the full moon day of Kartika was called Kumudi Day. That evening, the Buddha and his 3,000 disciples sat beneath the radiant full moon. The delicate fragrance of lotus flowers drifted up from the lake. The bhikkhus and bhikkhunis sat silently as the Buddha looked out over the community and praised them for their diligence. The Buddha used this special occasion to deliver the sutra on the full awareness of breathing. Of course, every bhikkhu and bhikkhuni present had been taught the method on the awareness of breathing, but this was the first time that most of them had had an opportunity to hear this teaching directly from the Buddha. It was also the first time that the Buddha compiled and summarized all his previous teachings on the awareness of breathing. Venerable Ananda listened intently, knowing that this sutra would be an important one to transmit to all the Sangha's centres. Bhikkhuni Yasudhara, Rahula's mother, and his sister Bhikkhuni Sundarananda were amongst those assembled. They'd both been ordained several years earlier under the guidance of Bhikkhuni Gautami. They practiced at a monastery north of Kapilavatthu, founded by Bhikkhuni Gautami. Yasudhara had requested to be ordained just 6 months after her mother-in-law, and after a year of practice, she had become one of Bhikkhuni Gautami's chief assistants. The bhikkhunis did their best to attend all the retreat sessions at Savatthi in order to receive direct teaching from the Buddha and his senior disciples. Queen Malika and Lady Visakha were wholehearted supporters of the nuns. For 2 years, the nuns were given a place in the imperial gardens to stay, but by the 3rd year, they had their own nunnery, thanks to the generous patronage of the Queen and Lady Visakha. Because she was growing old, Bhikkhuni Gautami devoted careful attention to training new leaders amongst the bhikkhunis, including bhikkhunis Yasudhara, Sila, Vimala, Soma, Mutta, and Naduttara. All of them were present that evening in Eastern Park. Venerable Savasti was introduced to Sister Yasudhara and Sister Sundarananda by Venerable Rahula. He was very moved to meet them at last. The Buddha delivered the sutra. Bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, the method of the full awareness of breathing, if developed and practiced continuously, will bring great rewards and advantages. It will lead to success in practicing the 4 establishments of mindfulness and the 7 factors of awakening, which will give rise to understanding and liberation. One practices as follows. The first breath, breathing in a long breath I know I am breathing in a long breath. Breathing out a long breath, I know I'm breathing out a long breath. The second breath. Breathing in a short breath, I know I'm breathing in a short breath. Breathing out a short breath, I know that I'm breathing out a short breath. These two breaths enable you to cut through forgetfulness and unnecessary thinking, at the same time giving rise to mindfulness and enabling you to encounter life in the present moment. Forgetfulness is the absence of mindfulness. Breathing with awareness enables us to return to ourselves and to life. The third breath. Breathing in, I am aware of my whole body. Breathing out, I am aware of my whole body. This breath enables you to contemplate the body and to be in direct contact with your own body. Awareness of the whole body and awareness of every part of the body allows you to see the wondrous presence of your body and the process of birth and death unfolding in your body. The fourth breath. I am breathing in and making my whole body calm and at peace. Breathing out, I am making the whole of my body calm and at peace. This breath helps you to realize calmness and peace in the body and arrive at a state in which mind, body, and breath are one harmonious reality. The fifth breath. I'm breathing in and feeling joyful. I'm breathing out and feeling joyful. The sixth breath. I'm breathing in and feeling happy. I'm breathing out and feeling happy. With these two breaths, you cross into the domain of feelings. The two breaths create peace and joy that can nourish mind and body. Thanks to the cessation of dispersion and forgetfulness, you return to yourself, aware of the present moment. Happiness and joy arise within you. You dwell in the wonders of life, able to taste the peace and joy mindfulness brings. Thanks to this encounter with the wonders of life, you're able to transform neutral feelings into pleasant feelings. These two breaths thus lead to pleasant feelings. The seventh breath. I am breathing in and am aware of the activities of the mind in me. I am breathing out and I'm aware of the activities of the mind in me. The eighth breath. I am breathing in and making the activities of the mind in me calm and at peace. I am breathing out and making the activities of the mind in me calm and at peace. These two breaths enable you to look deeply at all the feelings arising within you, whether they are pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, and enable you to make those feelings calm and at peace. The activities of the mind mean, in this case, the feelings. When you're aware of your feelings and can see deeply into their roots and nature, you can control them and make them calm and at peace, even though they may be unpleasant thoughts which arise from desire, anger, and jealousy. The ninth breath. I'm breathing in and I am aware of my mind. I'm breathing out and I'm aware of my mind. The 10th breath. I'm breathing in and making my mind happy and at peace. I'm breathing out and making my mind happy and at peace. The 11th breath. I'm breathing in and concentrating my mind. I'm breathing out and concentrating my mind. The 12th breath. I'm breathing in and liberating my mind. I'm breathing out and liberating my mind. With these 4 breaths, you cross into the 3rd domain, which is the mind. The 9th breath helps you to recognize all the states of the mind, such as perceptions, thinking, discrimination, happiness, sadness, and doubt. You observe and recognize these states in order to see deeply into the mind's activities. When the mind's activities are observed and recognized, you are able to concentrate your mind, making it quiet and at peace. This is brought about by the 10th and 11th breaths. The 12th breath enables you to release all the obstacles of the mind. Thanks to illuminating your mind, you can see the roots of all mental formations and thus overcome all obstacles. The 13th breath. I am breathing in and observing the impermanent nature of all dharmas. I am breathing out and observing the impermanent nature of all dharmas. The 14th breath. I am breathing in and observing the fading of all dharmas. I am breathing out and observing the fading of all dharmas. The 15th breath. I am breathing in and contemplating liberation. I am breathing out and contemplating liberation. The 16th breath. I am breathing in and contemplating letting go. I am breathing out and contemplating letting go. With these 4 breaths, the practitioner passes into the domain of objects of the mind and concentrates on the mind in order to observe the true nature of all dharmas. First is the observation of the impermanent nature of all dharmas. Because all dharmas are impermanent, they must all fade. When you clearly understand the impermanent and fading nature of all dharmas, you are no longer bound by the endless cycle of birth and death. Thanks to that, you can let go and attain liberation. Letting go does not mean to disdain or run away from life. Letting go means letting go of craving and clinging, so that you do not suffer from the endless cycle of birth and death to which all dharmas are subject. Once you have let go and attained liberation, you can live in peace and joy in the very midst of life. There is no longer anything which can bind you. So taught the Buddha how to observe deeply the body, feelings, mind, and objects of mind through the 16 methods of conscious breathing. He also applied the 16 exercises to the practice of the 7 factors of awakening, which are full attention, investigating dharmas, energy, joy, ease, concentration, and letting go. Savasti had already heard the sutra on the 4 establishments of mindfulness. He now felt that, thanks to this sutra on the full awareness of breathing, he could more deeply penetrate the 4 establishments. He saw how these 2 sutras complemented each other and how fundamental they both were to the practice of meditation. 3,000 bhikkhus and bhikkhunis joyously received the Buddha's teaching that night beneath the light of the full moon. Savasti's heart filled with gratitude to Venerable Sariputta for having made this night possible. One day, Venerable Ahimsaka returned from begging, covered with blood and barely able to walk. Savasti ran to help him. Ahimsaka asked to be taken to the Buddha. He explained that while he was out begging in the city, some people had recognized him as the former Angulimala. They had cornered him and begun to beat him. Ahimsaka did not resist their blows, but joined his hands to form a lotus bud, while allowing them to vent their anger and hatred. They battered him until he was vomiting blood. When the Buddha saw that Ahimsaka was hurt, he called to Ananda to get a basin of water and towel to wash away the blood. He asked Savasti to gather medicinal leaves to make poultices to place on Ahimsaka's wounds. Although he was in great pain, Ahimsaka did not cry out. The Buddha said, "Your sufferings today can rinse away all the sufferings of the past. Enduring suffering in love and awareness can erase the bitter hatred of 1,000 lifetimes. Ahimsaka, your robe has been torn to shreds. Where is your bowl?" "Lord, they shattered it." "I will ask Ananda to find you a new robe and bowl." As Savasti applied poultices to Ahimsaka's wounds, he realized what an example of non-violence Ahimsaka was. Venerable Ahimsaka told Savasti a story that had taken place only the day before when he was out begging. Beneath a tree in the forest, Ahimsaka encountered a woman in labor. She was in extreme pain and unable to give birth to the child. Ahimsaka cried out, "Such terrible pain," and ran to ask the Buddha what could be done. The Buddha said, "Run back to her and tell her, 'Madam, from the day I was born, I have never intentionally harmed any living being. By that merit, may you and your child be peaceful and safe.'" Ahimsaka protested, "I would be lying if I said such a thing. The truth is, I have harmed a great many living beings." The Buddha said, "Then go and tell her, 'Madam, since the day I was born in the noble Dharma, I have never intentionally harmed any living being. By that merit, may you and your child be peaceful and safe.'" Ahimsaka ran back to the forest and spoke those words. Within a few minutes, the woman safely gave birth to her child. Venerable Ahimsaka had travelled far along the path, earning the Buddha's highest praises. Chapter 57. The Raft is not the shore. That winter, the Buddha stayed at Vasali. One day, while he was meditating not far from the Kuttaragasala Dharma hall, several bhikkhus committed suicide in another part of the monastery. When the Buddha was informed, he asked what had led them to kill themselves. He was told that after meditating on the impermanent and fading nature of the body, these bhikkhus had expressed aversion for the body and no longer wished to live. The Buddha was saddened to hear this. He called all the remaining bhikkhus together. He said, "Bhikkhus, we meditate on impermanence and fading in order to see the true nature of all dharmas, so we will not be bound by them. Enlightenment and freedom cannot be attained by escaping the world. They can only be attained when one sees deeply into the true nature of all dharmas." These brothers did not understand, so they foolishly sought to escape. By doing so, they violated the precept against killing. Bhikkhus, a liberated person neither clings to dharmas nor feels aversion to them. Clinging and aversion are both ropes that bind. A free person transcends both in order to dwell in peace and happiness. Such a happiness cannot be measured. A free person does not cling to narrow views about permanence and a separate self, nor does he cling to narrow views about impermanence and non-self. Bhikkhus, study and practice the teaching intelligently in a spirit of non-attachment. And the Buddha taught the bhikkhus the practice of conscious breathing to help them refresh themselves. When he returned to Savatthi, the Buddha gave further teaching on breaking through attachment in response to a bhikkhu named Arita, who was bound to narrow views because he also misunderstood the teaching. Sitting before the bhikkhus at Jetavana, the Buddha said, "Bhikkhus, if the teaching is misunderstood, it is possible to be caught in narrow views, which will create suffering for oneself and others. You must listen to, understand, and apply the teaching in an intelligent manner. Someone who understands snakes uses a forked stick to pin down a snake's neck before trying to pick it up. If he picks up the snake by the tail or the body, the snake can easily bite him. Just as you would use your intelligence in catching a snake, you should use it to study the teaching. Bhikkhus, the teaching is merely a vehicle to describe the truth. Do not mistake it for the truth itself. A finger pointing at the moon is not the moon. The finger is needed to know where to look for the moon. But if you mistake the finger for the moon, you will never know the real moon. The teaching is like a raft that carries you to the other shore. The raft is needed, but the raft is not the other shore. An intelligent person would not carry the raft around on his head after making it across to the other shore. Because my teaching is the raft that can help you cross to the other shore beyond birth and death. Use the raft to cross to the other shore, but do not hang on to it as your property. Do not become caught in the teaching. You must be able to let it go. Because all the teaching I have given you, such as the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the Four Establishments of Mindfulness, the Seven Factors of Awakening, impermanence, non-self, suffering, emptiness, signlessness, and aimlessness, should be studied in an intelligent, open manner. Use the teachings to help you reach liberation. Do not become attached to them. The monastery for bhikkhunis has 500 nuns. They frequently invited the Buddha and other venerables from Jetavana to come and give them Dharma talks. Venerable Bhanda was asked by the Buddha to be in charge of selecting which monks would deliver Dharma talks to the bhikkhunis. One day he assigned Venerable Bhanda to go. Venerable Bhanda had attained deep fruits in his practice, but he was not noted for his speaking talent. The following day, after begging and eating his meal alone in the forest, he went to the bhikkhunis' center. The sisters warmly received him, and Bhikkhuni Gautami asked him to sit on the pedestal to give his Dharma talk. After settling on his cushion, he recited a short poem. Dwelling in tranquility, seeing the Dharma, returning to the source without hatred or violence, peace and joy overflow. Mindfulness is held perfectly. True peace and ease are realized. Transcending all desires is the greatest happiness. The Venerable said no more, but proceeded to enter into a state of deep concentration. Though his words had been few, his presence radiated peace and happiness, which most of the sisters found greatly encouraging. Some of the younger sisters, however, were disappointed by how short his talk was. They urged Bhikkhuni Gautami to ask if he might say something more. Bhikkhuni Gautami bowed to Venerable Bhanda and expressed the wish of the younger sisters. But Venerable Bhanda simply repeated the same poem again, and then stepped down from the pedestal. Some days later, the Buddha was told about Venerable Bhanda's Dharma talk. It was suggested to the Buddha that in future, monks more talented at speaking should give the Dharma talks. But the Buddha replied that the person's presence was more important than his words. One morning, after returning from his begging, the Buddha was unable to find Ananda. Venerable Rahula and others said they had not seen him. Then one bhikkhu reported that he had seen Ananda go begging in a nearby village of untouchables. The Buddha asked that bhikkhu to go to the village and look for Ananda. The bhikkhu found Ananda and returned with him to the monastery. He also brought back two women, a mother and her daughter, whose name was Prakriti. The Buddha listened to Ananda explain how he'd been delayed that day. One day, several weeks before, on his way back to the monastery after begging, Ananda suddenly felt thirsty. He stopped by the well in the untouchable village for a drink. There he found Prakriti lifting a bucket of water from the well. She was a beautiful young woman. Ananda asked her for a drink of water, but she refused. She told him she was an untouchable and dare not pollute a monk by offering him water. Ananda told her, "I do not need high rank or caste. I only need a drink of water. I would be happy to receive it from you. Please do not be afraid of polluting me." Prakriti offered him water at once. She felt drawn to this kind, handsome monk who spoke so gently. She was smitten with love. At night she could not sleep. All her thoughts were of Ananda. She waited by the well every day in the hopes of catching a glimpse of him. She persuaded her mother to invite him to share a meal in their home. He accepted twice, but sensing that the young woman had fallen in love with him, he refused additional invitations. Prakriti was lovesick. She grew thin and pale, and finally she confessed her feelings to her mother. She said that she wanted Ananda to renounce his vows and marry her. Her shocked mother shouted at her and told her that it was a foolish and impossible love. But Prakriti said she would sooner die than give up Ananda. Fearing for her daughter's health, Prakriti's mother prepared an aphrodisiac in the hopes that she might get Ananda to respond to her daughter's passion. She was from the Matanga clan and knew a number of shamanistic potions. That morning, Prakriti met Ananda in the street and implored him to accept one last invitation at their home. Ananda was confident he could offer Prakriti and her mother teaching that would enable Prakriti to let go of her desire for him. But he had no chance to teach anything before he drank the tainted tea. His head began to swim and his limbs went weak. He realized at once what had happened, and he returned to his breathing to counteract the effects of the herbs. The bhikkhu sent by the Buddha found him in Prakriti's hut, sitting perfectly still in the lotus position. The Buddha gently asked Prakriti, "You love Bhikkhu Ananda deeply, don't you?" Prakriti replied, "I love him with all my heart." "What is it you love about him? Is it his eyes, his nose, or perhaps his mouth?" "I love everything about him. His eyes, his nose, his mouth, his voice, the way he walks. Master, I love everything about him." Besides his eyes, nose, mouth, voice, and walk, Bhikkhu Ananda possesses many beautiful qualities which you do not yet know. "What qualities are those?" asked Prakriti. The Buddha answered, "His heart of love is one. Do you know what Bhikkhu Ananda loves?" "Sir, I do not know what he loves. I only know that he doesn't love me." You're mistaken. Bhikkhu Ananda does love you, but not in the way you desire. Bhikkhu Ananda loves the path of liberation, freedom, peace and joy. Thanks to the liberation and freedom he experiences, Bhikkhu Ananda often smiles. He loves all other beings. He wants to bring the path of liberation to all others, so that they too may enjoy freedom, peace and joy. Prakriti, Bhikkhu Ananda's love comes from understanding and liberation. He does not suffer or feel hopeless because of his love, unlike the way your love makes you feel. If you truly love Bhikkhu Ananda, you will understand his love, and you will allow him to continue living the life of liberation he has chosen. If you knew how to love in the way that Bhikkhu Ananda does, you would no longer suffer and feel hopeless. Your suffering and hopelessness result from your wanting Bhikkhu Ananda all to yourself. That is a selfish kind of love. Prakriti looked at the Buddha and asked, "But how can I love in the way that Bhikkhu Ananda loves?" Love in a way that will preserve the happiness of Bhikkhu Ananda as well as your own happiness. Bhikkhu Ananda is like a fresh breeze. If you catch a breeze and trap it in a prison of love, the breeze will soon die, and no one will be able to benefit from its coolness, including yourself. Love Ananda as you would love a refreshing breeze. Prakriti, if you could love like that, you too could become a cool, refreshing breeze yourself. You would relieve your own pains and burdens, and those of many others as well. Please, Master, teach me how to love in such a way. You can choose the same path as Bhikkhu Ananda. You can live a life of liberation, peace and joy, bringing happiness to others just as Bhikkhu Ananda does. You could be ordained just as he is. But I'm an untouchable. How can I be ordained? We have no caste in our Sangha. Several untouchable men have already been ordained as bhikkhus. Venerable Sunita, so highly regarded by King Pasenadi, was an untouchable. If you wanted to become a bhikkhuni, you would be the first nun to come from the untouchables. If you want, I will ask Sister Kema to perform an ordination ceremony for you. Overcome with joy, Prakriti prostrated herself before the Buddha and asked to be ordained. The Buddha gave Prakriti into Sister Kema's care. After the nun and the young woman departed, the Buddha looked at Ananda and then spoke to the entire community. Bhikkhus, Ananda's vows are still intact, but I want all of you to be more careful in your outside relations. If you dwell continuously in mindfulness, you will see what is taking place both inside yourself and without of you. Detecting something early on will enable you to deal with it effectively. By practicing mindfulness every moment of your daily life, you will be able to develop the concentration needed to avoid situations such as this. When your concentration is strong and stable, your vision will be clear and your actions timely. Concentration and understanding go hand in hand with each other. Each contains the other. They are one. Bhikkhus, regard women older than yourself as your mother or elder sister. Regard women younger than yourself as your younger sister or your daughter. Do not let your attractions cause difficulties for your practice. If necessary, until your concentration is stronger, limit your contacts with women. Speak only words which relate to the study and practice of the way. The bhikkhus were happy to receive Ananda's guidance.